Well, I'm here to tell you that the perception of not having enough time in social work is a myth. What's up, social workers? This is Ernesto from Social Work Mentor, and I'm assuming that if you clicked on this video, it's because you're maybe a little overwhelmed, a little burned out, you're kind of struggling in your social work role right now. Well, boy, do I have a social work hot take for you. And because this is kind of the theme of this video, I want to make sure that you have a tool that at least potentially could help you get through some of this stress, this overload, this burnout. So if you go to socialworkmentor.com/links, you'll find access to several tools there that could potentially help you get through this rough spot, and even some social work gear like this. So check it out, and I hope some of that's helpful for you. But now let's get into why you're really here. Social workers often feel and say that they don't have time to get their work done. Well, I'm here to tell you that the perception of not having enough time in social work is a myth. All right. Before you start throwing things at me, let me explain myself. Social work is definitely a beast, and it kind of depends, obviously, on the area of social work that you work in. Overall, social work as a profession can be very demanding. There are times when there's nothing you can do about it. The demand is there, the overload is there, and there are times when it's just going to be something that you have to get through. But that being said, I am of the belief that not every single time when we think something is a crisis or something is urgent or we have to get all these things done, I don't think that's always the case. I think sometimes we as social workers create a reality for ourselves that makes things more difficult than they need to be. Every single thing that we do, I would venture to say, in social work is important. But we are led to believe, either through our supervisors or managers or colleagues or whatever it may be, we're led to believe that everything is urgent, everything is a crisis. And that is what leads us down that path towards overwhelm, stress, and burnout. But I'm here to tell you that not everything is urgent. Not everything is a crisis. But what we as social workers need to learn to do is differentiate between those tasks or duties. What are the things that require our immediate attention, and what are the things that can kind of wait, hold off, or maybe it's not even our job at all? You see, I think as social workers, our inherent belief systems or value systems kind of force us or make us feel like we want to help everybody. So if our boss comes along and throws a task our way when we're already swimming in a whole bunch of other stuff that we got to get done, we tend to want to take it on. Sure, we'll help. When a coworker comes along and wants us to cover something for them because they're not available, sure, we'll help you out. When a client calls that tells us they need something immediately, even though it could probably wait a few days, sure, we'll get that right out to you. Often we as social workers, because of our code of ethics and everything that makes us social workers, we tend to say yes to everything. And when we say yes to everything, what we're basically saying is everything is a priority. A crucial statement that I think we need to realize as social workers is that when everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. What I mean by that, for example, is if this crisis level domestic violence, intimate partner violence situation is going to take the same precedence on our schedule as picking up a kid's transcripts from their high school, if we put the same level of priority or urgency on both of those things, then really neither one of them is as important as the other. They're just equal. In actuality, we know that that domestic violence situation is almost for sure more important than the transcript situation. And yet in our minds, in our schedules, in our workflow, we kind of just jumble everything up because we've said yes to all these things without a tool or a system to prioritize and really organize that work. Sure, some of us have a to-do list, or maybe we write things in the calendar, but it's oftentimes kind of haphazard and really not following any set of rules or guidelines for how we distribute and prioritize that work. And when it's done in this type of way, I don't think that's really a system that's going to let us be successful. So what I believe that you need, and something that I developed 20 years ago now in my career, is an actual objective way of determining priority of situations so that you can then figure out where you're going to focus your attentions and who you potentially can or need to say no to. Maybe if you use a tool or a system to determine just how important something is, you might find out that that task that your coworker is asking you to help with just is not high enough on the priority list, and you have to take care of other things on your to-do list or whatever you're using that are of a higher priority. So earlier on, when I said that not having enough time as a social worker is a myth, what I really meant is that it's not that you don't have enough time, because we all have the same amount of time, and yet there are some social workers who are more efficiently able to get things done and maintain fairly good work-life balance when others are just not able to do it. So my contention is that there is enough time. The problem is actually that we have too much work, either work that we've just been assigned too much of, or work that we really haven't prioritized to determine what we actually need to do. When you are able to prioritize your work using an objective method, you can kind of weed out those things that, as I already said, are more important or less important, but also you can weed out those things that really is not your job to do. And so using a tool, using a method that allows you to objectively define priority is what you need to be able to prioritize work and weed out work that's not even yours. Now, let me go back to a point that I said before. We know this is social work, and the reality is there will be crisis. There will be times when there is overwhelm, when for periods of time you're swamped. That's in any job, I think, but in social work, it sometimes is heightened because the intensity and the real life implications of what we need to do. But when you're able to prioritize, when you're able to determine importance or urgency or levels of crisis, and when you're able to weed out that work that's not really yours, you can begin to take back some level of work-life balance and get control over your workflow, where you define in many ways what you do, when you do it, and how you do it. So I've said all this stuff about using a tool or a specific system or a method, and that's really probably kind of vague for some of you. Some of you might have something developed kind of, but it may not be working as well as you need it to because you're still watching this video. So what I want to offer you is access to a tool that I've developed over the years that is exactly the tool that I'm talking about, that will just ask a series of very simple, basic questions about any given task or request that comes your way. And in answering those questions, it objectively lays out the priority of what that particular task may be. So what I want to give you is access to this priority tool that I've developed over the past 25 years, that I've used myself and that I've shared with other colleagues of mine who have used it to gain control over their workflow. The tool itself is a very simple set of questions that you just answer yes or no, and it will define for you the level of priority of any given task or request. So obviously every situation will be specific to you, to your role, to the requirements of your job, but this tool goes a long way in helping you to determine priority as it pertains to risk, danger, harm, the things that we really need to look out for in social work. This tool, I just call it the Social Work Priority Tool. It's available to anybody with an online connection, whether it's through a tablet or a desktop, a laptop, your cell phone. As long as you have access to the internet, you have access to the tool. So I'll leave a link in the description of this video to where you can get the tool. Go ahead and use it, try it out. You'll begin to see how it can assist you to determine prioritization of your work. Once you're able to determine that using this objective tool, it becomes easier, again, to determine the urgency or the priority of your work, and to sometimes say no to tasks, to say no to people using, not just because you don't want to do it or you don't feel like it or you don't like them, but because you've run it through this objective tool that is assessing for priority for you. Because as we mentioned, if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority.